I stated on Facebook that rewriting Phantom Menace was my waking nightmare, and I was wrong. This is my waking nightmare. Star Wars Attack of the Clones. By far, in my opinion, one of the worst films that I have ever seen, but also the worst film in the Star Wars franchise, especially when it comes to the prequels. Now, of course, last week I talked about how I would have rewritten the Star Wars Phantom Menace. Now I get to do this. Oh boy, I had a really hard time understanding some of this movie's intentions. I mean, cram-packed stories involved in here, cheesy love story, very poor character development. It just I literally feel like this was the movie that I might have gone to see it to. And the weird thing was, I saw it with my dad, and one of the things that he was confused about, as well as I was the fact that Yoda can go from a rickety old man to being a flying mosquito. Now, maybe he is indeed in tune with the Force, but it's still one of those things that leaves a lot of questions to a lot of people. So, let's talk about what I would do differently when it comes to the Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Okay, so how it starts off, I can kind of understand where it was going. I mean, they had that big scene where they had an assassination attempt. Honestly, I would still keep that, and unfortunately, I would kill off Padme's mother, the Queen of Naboo, which seems very dark, but also at the same time, it definitely does set the tone for what is to come in the movie. Now, of course, this is years later, and Padme is now a senator. She is more political, and she actually has a little more say in the Senate. Now, one thing I definitely would not do is have about a almost 30-minute deal where they talk about how the clones are created and all this kind of stuff. It just made absolutely no sense. I would actually have the clones be inserted right here. Basically, Palpatine took over as Chancellor after the last one was previously ousted. I would have him make the official proclamation that they definitely do need to start having more protection in his mind. He believes that more protection is going to be better for the Senate, and of course he talks about creating an army. So they created this army. It's all fine dandy, and a lot of the senators actually approve of this. And of course, there are some selects, such as Bail Organa and Padme, who are against it, but they also understand in this case why it's so necessary. So, yeah, we would definitely see a lot more of the clones being involved, a lot more of the action involved here. And, again, it's just basically going with the title, Attack of the Clones. So, who's the person that goes for the assassination? Not Jango, because here's the thing. I think that Jango and Boba's story can be definitely a spin-off movie. So I would actually have just them doing like a dark figure. Nobody knows who this dark figure is yet until near the end of the movie, so I'll explain that as time goes on. But no, I'll explain right now. Basically, it would actually not be, Jango Fett. It would actually be Grievous. Because when you put in too many characters into one movie, it definitely does. Well, the thing is that Jango doesn't even survive that long. We're going to have another tie-in character here, and the reason why General Grievous is here is because he is going to be a crucial part to not only the Clone Wars, but also to what will eventually be, Anakin's demise to become Darth Vader. But I'll explain that more next week when I do the final take on this. So, obviously, the Chancellor Palpatine, he wants to put Padme under protection, so we still go with that story, but we don't have, this whole deal where Anakin Skywalker is a whiny little, bratty little, immature kid. No, he actually grows up to be, mature. He actually does seem a bit like adult. He can make some mistakes every now and then, but he's not as, bratty as the movie definitely perceived him. And also, during the opening scenes, we see Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker actually get introduced to Owen Lars, and why he ties into this is because we definitely do need to have something and someone who will be there for a reason, and he is going to be there for a reason. Right now, he's definitely a fighter pilot. He is helping with everything that is going on with the Senate, and of course, he is like a good friend to Anakin. So while Obi-Wan Kenobi is like the father figure, Owen is more of a friend figure. I shouldn't say friend figure, more of a friend, I should say. So, of course, we get the whole same deal where, the assassination attempt on Padme, but it fails because Anakin and Obi-Wan, they thwart it. Time goes on. We still get the deal in which we have Padme, Anakin, and Owen. They actually are leaving Coruscant, but they don't go to Naboo. I really do not see any reason to, have that be a thing. I mean, obviously, if whoever's going to assassinate Padme is going to know where she's going to go, they're going to automatically assume, Naboo, because that's where she's from. No, they're actually going to be going to Alderaan. Again, there's a reason. Later on, I'll explain. So, we have a little bit of a story between Owen and Anakin, where Owen is there basically helping Anakin get through some of the frustrations where he thinks that he's not ready to be, where he's not feeling like he's being utilized as much, and he also balances out with Padme. We do not see like a lot of the cheesy storyline there where he talks about, sand, or he talks about some weird stuff. I mean, they kind of do like small flirting every now and then, and we actually see a natural blooming of the relationship. But here's something also that really kind of annoyed me a bit, was the fact that Anakin definitely did, talk about what is restricted by Jedi, but it's never really mentioned that marriage was one of them. So, yes, I just don't think that, it made really sense just to bring that up. So, it's one of those things where, he basically explains what, is forbidden by the Jedi, but at the same time, he knows, what is right in his heart, really. So, while that is going on, of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi is trying to figure out who's doing the assassination attempts, and he does, in fact, find out by going to a separatist base, which is on Geonosis. So he is basically a spy looking at the plans, looking at everything that's going on, and he's actually eventually captured by Count Dooku. Now, in this movie and in this version, he is actually not a Sith Lord. He is actually a Separatist sympathizer, I guess we could call him. And later on, he actually talks about, leaving the Jedi Order to work with the Separatists because he thinks that they were in the right, but then he realizes the Separatists were not in the right, so he's kind of like that intermediate balance between the two of them. And we also get a little bit more depth between Obi-Wan and Count Dooku, where he does explain, this is what I taught Qui-Gon, this is some of the things that I taught him, and now he's passing his knowledge on to Obi-Wan, including the fear that he has heard rumors that the Senate could be controlled by a Sith Lord. So this is happening, and while this is also going on, we actually still have the whole deal where Anakin has these premonitions about his mother. He gets scared, and he decides to make the trip to Tatooine. And for Owen, it's one of those things where it's like, you know what, this will be great for me, because then I can actually, go back and visit my family. And, he basically, guides him and Padme, who goes along as well, because, she'll of course make the whole deal where it's like, well, I choose to go, and you're going to be protecting me, so it makes sense. Kind of does, actually. So, Anakin and Owen go to Tatooine. They end up at the place where Owens lives. We get to introduce to Aunt Peru, as well as Anakin's father-in-law, and it's just one of those things where it's, by coincidence that they basically mention, we gotta find my mother, and he comes in and he says, like, well, what's her first name? And she says, Shmi Skywalker. And of course he says, well, I actually married her. And they talk about, the whole thing with the Tusken Raiders. Anakin goes out and finds the Tusken Raider camp, and we still get that scene, that very emotional scene where, of course, Shmi is found by Anakin. They have that emotional deal where she sees her son grown up, and she eventually, of course, dies off. And this is one of those things that belated media kind of took out because they made it seem like it wasn't necessary. This I actually disagree with, and I'll explain. I would still have the whole deal where Anakin lets his emotions just kind of run wild here. I would still keep that, where he does indeed, kill all the Tusken Raiders that killed off his mother. And when he comes back, he of course has, Shmi's body, and they do indeed do that funeral deal. And you definitely do, and Padme definitely sees that Anakin is going through something, and she believes it's mainly because of the fact that, Anakin's dealing with all this emotion of losing his mother, and she's there for him, and of course these two have something that they kind of connect on. They both lost their mothers in kind of a very kind of sick, twisted, kind of ironic kind of way. And here's the other crucial thing, is that she definitely notices that there seems to be something else that's troubling him, but instead of telling the truth that he killed all the Tusken Raiders, he actually lies and just says, I'm just not feeling right because I lost my real mother, and I lost somebody who was like a mother to me, and your mother. It's just, it is too much. It just seems like, he makes it seem like, it was too much for him to handle, and she didn't realize how much of an effect that, her own mother would have on Anakin. So she's really there, of course, to be his rock, to be there for him. And eventually, of course, we get the scene in which Obi-Wan sends a call out to Anakin. they head to Geonosis. They meet up with Count Dooku, and then we also get the Trade Federation army coming in. They try to take Obi-Wan and Anakin captive, but of course we get that whole deal where we have the clone troopers. We have that battle there, so we get to see them more in action. But also they see that dark figure that was on Coruscant when it tried to assassinate Padme. So Anakin and Obi-Wan follow that creature to the ship. The robe comes off, and then we get our first glimpse of General Grievous. So he has his lightsabers, and it is basically a major battle between the two of between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and General Grievous. Some of the things that definitely did indeed happen still, where actually this time around they work together as a team, but Grievous actually finds a way to break them off from each other. Like Anakin goes for a swing on Grievous, but Grievous does a deal where he throws Anakin against the wall and takes him out for a while. Obi-Wan Kenobi's battling, we see him get injured, and then we see Anakin fighting as much as he could, but Anakin eventually, of course, loses his arm to General Grievous. It seems like Grievous is going to end them, but then one of the troopers actually shoots and nails Grievous right into the right in his chest area, which will explain more as to why General Grievous was coughing so much during the Revenge of the Sith movie. So we actually have a reason behind it, because when we see that in the original parts of the Revenge of the Sith, it was just one of those things where it's like, what? I don't really understand it, because it just seemed like he was just coughing for no reason whatsoever. So General Grievous is injured, he gets on a ship, and he leaves. Of course, he gives his plans to the Death Star to Sidious, who basically eventually, of course, meet up, and of course, this also ties into Darth Sidious going back to his apprentice Darth Maul, who was still alive. He is now finally getting ready to exact his quote-unquote revenge against the Jedi. So then we have the scene between Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi, where they talk about how this just seems like it's going to be an all-out war, and we're definitely going to need all hands on deck. And also Mace Windu definitely talks about, talking to Yoda about everything, and all Yoda had to say that, this is going to be a war that we are definitely not going to be ready for, but we are going to have to do everything we can to win this war, because it definitely is going to be a turning point for the Jedi. So, of course, we also get the secret, the marriage between Padme and Anakin. That's just a secret, just mainly because they don't want, because it's not because, it's forbidden, it's just because Anakin doesn't want the Jedi Council to think that he is distracted. He wants them to believe that he is indeed focused on everything that is going on with the Republic and with the war, but he also cannot, deny his love for Padme. Now, obviously, we had that one moment in the Clone Wars where, Anakin and Padme are, they are basically at the point of near death, and she basically, says, "I love you," and they have that kiss. During this time, actually, Anakin is on the medical ship, and she talks about how she was worried that she had lost him, and she could not imagine her life without him, because they have been, friends for so long. And that's, of course, when she expresses her love to him. They have the kiss, and they obviously realize how important they are to each other, so they, of course, get secretly married. So that's basically to sum that up. And this cuts off the Part 2 section, the Attack of the Clones deal. Obviously, this is probably not one of the best, but at the same time, this is a lot better than the Attack of the Clones that we got in theaters. So, I'm actually still proud of this. So, thank you guys so much for joining me here. I have been Nate the Effing Great. This has been The Game Changer. Give us a like, give us a follow on Twitter, and be sure to tune in for more episodes, you guys, because it is going to be absolutely amazing as we are on the road to Money in the Bank. So, I've been Nate the Effing Great. Like I said, this has been The Game Changer. I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye!